Alright, 6th graders, today we're going to be looking at circles and circumference. By the end of this lesson, you want to be able to estimate and find the actual circumference of circles. Now with circles, there are a few more definitions that we should talk about. First of all, circle by definition is a set of all points in a plane that are the same distance from a single given point. The center is the given point in a circle that all other points are the same distance from. Pretty straightforward. Alright. Now when we're talking about circles, there's also something called a chord. A chord is any line segment with both endpoints on the circle. So if we go down to our circle I have drawn here, okay, I'm going to do my best. So the point in the middle would be the center. Okay? And then this, by definition, would be a circle. And a chord is anything that has the endpoints on the circle. So that, technically, is a chord. But when we talk about chords, there's actually, we'll get into ones that are a little bit more specific. The circumference is the distance around a circle. So it's equivalent to talking about the circle's perimeter. Okay? So when we look here, if I were to outline this in red, that is the circumference. Okay? And then the radius is the distance from the center to any point on the circle. It is also considered half the diameter. So if we look here, that line would be a radius. And then the diameter is the longest possible chord. It's the distance across the circle through its center, and it is 2 times the radius. Because what happens is the diameter, there's a radius, so the radius happens twice. So when it goes all the way across, that is considered its diameter. So we can use our information about diameters and radiuses to help us with circles. If the diameter of a circle is 14 inches, what's the radius? So remember, a radius is half the diameter. So I'm just going to take 14, I'm going to divide it by 2, which gives us 7 inches. Okay? So if the radius of a circle is 2 feet, what's the diameter? Well, the diameter is 2 times the radius. So we're going to have 2 times 2, which would be 4 feet. There's some other things that we need to talk about when we talk about circles. One of those is the Greek symbol pi. You'll often see it look like that as well. The Greek symbol for 3.1415926, and then actually the number keeps going on forever, and they are still finding numbers to pi. It is what is called an irrational number. This is the constant of proportionality between the circumference of a circle and its diameter. So basically what happened is a long time ago some Greeks were looking at circles, and they figured out that if they took the circumference, if they actually measured all the way around a circle and took its diameter, so they went across through the middle, they always found the same number coming out, and they named it pi. Okay? And the reason that is important is it helps us determine the circumference of a circle when we don't have the means to actually measure around the outside. So the circumference of a circle is equal to pi times its diameter, or pi times 2 times the radius. So it'll look like this. Circumference is pi times the diameter, or you'll see it written this, 2 times pi times the radius, because twice the radius is equal to the diameter. Either one of those are okay to use. So now when we're working with circumference and pi, we can actually use we can use 3 to estimate this in place of pi, and we can use 3.14 as an approximation value. So when we're just estimating, we can use 3. When we are actually finding the circumference, if we're just getting an approximate value, we can use 3.14. Otherwise, on some of your calculators, you might actually have a pi button to use too. So we want to find the area and circumference of each circle. And actually, we didn't talk about area earlier, but the area of a circle is just going to be pi times your radius squared. So in this first one, if we're doing the circumference, remember circumference is equal to pi times your diameter, or 2 times pi times your radius, depending on what you have. So when we're finding their circumference here, if we were going to estimate, we could just take 3 in place of pi times their diameter, which is 7. So the circumference would be about 21 inches. If we wanted to find a more exact answer, I could use 3.14 in place of pi times 7. And when I do that, I get 21.98 inches. So once again, this would be our estimate, and this would be our approximation. Now if we're going to find the area, which you're not going to have to do in the homework, but it's just good to know, our area is equal to pi, so if we're going to estimate, I'm going to use 3, times our radius. So remember, our radius is half our diameter, so if our diameter is 7, we divide that by 2 and we get 3.5. So 3 times 3.5 squared. Order of operations, we have to do our 3.5 squared first, so that means 3.5 times 3.5, which is 12.25. So we're going to take that times 3 to kind of estimate our area, and it would be about 36.75 inches squared. So when you go ahead and pause the video and see if you can figure out the next one on your own. Okay, so for circumference, we're going to use 3 if we estimate, times 4 times 2, because it's just our radius, which would be 12 times 2, or 24 centimeters approximately. So that's our estimate. If we were finding the an approximation, and I use 3.14 times 4 times 2, which would be 8, we would get 25.12 centimeters. And then once again for our area, because they gave us our radius, we're just estimating, we're going to do 3 times 4 squared. 4 squared is 16, so 3 times 16 gives us an answer of about 48 centimeters squared. Like I said, the area. And like I said, you're not going to necessarily have to use the area a ton right now, but it's just a good reference point for in the future.